From the Tennessee Valley Weather Channel, this is Forecasting Space.
Hey folks, happy Friday and welcome to Forecasting Space, the show with me, your host Chase Wilson, where for all you space and STEM nerds out there, we go over all things space, from interesting launches over the last week and interesting developments in the world of astronomy. First things first, I want to talk about the recent success of Starship Flight 11. Yes, indeed, on Monday, October 13th from Starbase, the 11th flight test of Starship went off pretty much without a hitch. It was the final launch of V2, so a lot of people have been saying the V2 curse is broken because the V2 Starship has had some issues. I mean, we've seen re-entry issues, we've seen engine launch issues in the second stage, especially in space, at one point even spiraling out of control. This time, however, everything went off just about perfectly. This is actually pretty much similar to the 10th flight, which also went pretty well. So after this, we're going to be seeing the V3 Starship, which has advanced avionics, better heat protection on the tiles, better engines. The Starship will have those V3 Raptors now. Pretty much though, this one achieved all of its goals from launch to the booster descent and splash out in the Gulf. It was not a catch, it was just a simulated catch in the Gulf, testing a new engine pattern, this time actually igniting 5 engines on the descent burn after those 13 to slow it down, unlike typical, which was 3. So we saw that happen successfully. It hovered there almost stationary above the ocean, then fell and boom, it went boom, right? Of course, this was a planned boom, not a rapid unscheduled disassembly, a rapid scheduled disassembly, an RSD, I guess you could call it, but certainly a positive step forward in the rocket's development thus far. The Starship went into a suborbital trajectory just fine. All engines were nominal as it went through re-entry. Boy, that thing sure went through it. They continued to push the limits, and it actually did an S-turn. Now, if you know anything about space, on the re-entry turn of the flights, right, the space shuttle actually did something similar. It kind of veered left, veered right, did these S-shaped turns to bleed off speed and guide its trajectory on re-entry. Starship did something similar to really push the envelope of what it was capable of, and hey, it went off without a hitch. I mean, they just continue to throw extremes at this in terms of the flight envelope. Ideally, in most cases, launches would not be under these sorts of stresses with missing tiles and things like that, but still, it went through the atmosphere, reignited those 2 engines to flip and burn, and landed safely in the Gulf once again, very close to the landing site as well, due to the fact that, well, obviously we saw it on the drone ship, or rather the little buoy with camera, so clearly it was on target. Just incredible what V2 has done and how far it's come, especially given, like I mentioned earlier, there was a bit of a curse for a little bit as V2 just continued to fail in various different ways. However, like I said, the V2 curse is broken on the last couple launches, and either way, V3 is coming up. V3 will have very similar flight profiles to this for the initial few, so we won't see too many major differences initially, but I suspect the capabilities will grow perhaps exponentially as we continue to see the iteration of V3, V4, and beyond of Starship. So here's hoping that we can get another launch before the end of the year, probably going to be more like January, February, but I'm excited to see the development continue of Starship. In other news, ESA's ExoMars and Mars Express orbiters observed the Comet 3I Atlas. This has been a very interesting thing to track because this is an interstellar comet. What I mean by that is this comet did not come from the solar system. It actually came from interstellar space and happened to drift into the temporary orbit of the sun. And this thing is strange. Now, the 2 Mars orbiters had the closest view of the comet of all the ESA spacecraft, so it was a natural conclusion that these should go ahead and observe it during its closest approach to Mars on the 3rd of October, just a couple of weeks ago. This interstellar comet was a mere 31 million kilometers away from them, which sounds like a lot, but that's practically the backyard in terms of astronomical distances. Now, each spacecraft uses dedicated cameras to watch the comet pass. Both of these are actually designed for Mars, right? These are Mars orbiters. They were not originally planning to observe comets, but they actually got some pretty good views. You can actually even see in these images here of the TGO, the ExoMars camera, the tail there, right? So it couldn't exactly distinguish precise images of the nucleus and the coma because it was a little too far away, but still, you can actually see some pretty good details considering the hardware that they're given. Now, the coma was definitely large, right? It's a few thousand kilometers across, so it wasn't too hard to see that, and that's actually due to the fact that the sun's heat radiation is bringing the comet close to life, causing it to release the gas and dust, right, which collects as this halo surrounding the nucleus. Couldn't really measure the full size of it by CASIS, which is one of the instruments, because the brightness of the dust decreases quickly with distance from the nucleus. nucleus, so the coma fades very quickly into the noise of the image, right? So again, going back to the fact that these were not designed to view comets, but it definitely shows the ingenuity and the cleverness that it takes to kind of utilize these tools, right? Work with what you got. You don't need to launch a new spacecraft for everything, that much is for sure. Nevertheless, it's been subject to some somewhat dubious speculation that this might be an alien spacecraft. I kind of want to address that too, the three-eye atlas phenomenon. I've seen this on YouTube and on Facebook, people saying, well, this looks unnatural, this looks out of line, this is atypical. No. This is not an alien spacecraft. This is not a spaceship. It's an interstellar object. That's why it looks so weird, is because it's not from here. It's not from our backyard. This is not something we typically see. So yeah, of course, it's going to look strange, but I kind of just want to address that, by the way, because I know I've seen it tons, right? People talking about how this is an alien spacecraft coming for us. No, don't listen to that if I even needed to tell you that. I know in this day of misinformation, a lot of people make a lot of money on the clicks doing that, but don't worry, this is going to stay well away from us. It's not going to invade us. It is not going to harvest our organs or anything like that. Just very interesting interstellar phenomenon. Well, we continue to be just weeks away from Blue Origin's second launch of their New Glenn rocket carrying the Escapade twin satellites into orbit soon. Again, there's no exact specific dates. You might be keeping a close eye on this. I know in Huntsville we've been hearing plenty of Blue Origin rocket engine tests, but we're very, very close, just a few weeks as of early October, right? Delays in the launch have actually pushed it back. This was originally scheduled for 2024, and this has actually forced adjustments to the mission's trajectory. SpaceNews.com reported on October 2nd. Now, the initial plan, though, remains the same, right? Escapade is going into what's called a super synchronous transfer orbit with an apogee, or highest level, of about 100,000 kilometers, after which the spacecraft would use its thrusters to head on to Mars. Yes, this is heading to Mars. This is the Escapade twin satellites. Escapade is actually an acronym. You know, NASA loves their acronyms. That stands for Escape and Plasma Acceleration and Dynamics Explorers. This is, again, twins, two satellites coming up here. As the launch slipped into fall 2024, initially they were actually just going to launch it straight to Mars, but now this super synchronous orbit at 100,000 kilometers is the preferred method. The mission team actually developed that on the fly. Again, it seems like the trend this month is ingenuity, cleverness in terms of getting your missions done. This flexibility creates about a 90-minute or so launch window, which would remain available all the way into November or December. So we do have a maximum extent at which we can do this, which again is into maybe early to mid-December. But it looks like Blue Origin is pretty confident that this will go at least in the next few weeks, perhaps into the end of October, more likely into the first middle half, however, of November. So I'm very excited about this. As a Huntsville native and resident myself, I've been hearing a lot of those Blue Origin engines, those BE4s, testing on the stands at Redstone Arsenal, so I love to see some work that they're putting in. Well, that concludes this episode of Forecasting Space with me, your host, Chase Wilson. Thanks for joining me this week. Tune in next Friday for the latest, and keep your eyes to the sky.